Bat Force Radio.
Bat Force Radio is rated M for mature, or should that be immature?
Hey guys, Dustin Wynn.
Hey, this is Scott Snyder.
This is Paul Dini.
And you're listening to Bat Force Radio.
And you're listening to Bat Force Radio.
You're listening to Bat Force Radio.
This is Kevin Conroy, the voice of Batman, and you're listening to Bat Force Radio, so stay tuned.
Welcome back to Bat Force Radio, the Batman and DC podcast with no limits. This week we have Grandpa Batman in Texas.
Let's go Stars.
The Bat Force Times in New York.
Hello, hello.
Bat Force Tom in California.
Go Dodgers.
And I'm Robin Cross in Canada. And this week's guest is a director, storyboard artist, character designer, etc., known for his work on the world-changing Batman the Animated Series, Mask of the Phantasm, Young Justice, among many others, and many things that many of us grew up watching and still watch today. Please welcome the man who gave Harley Quinn her pigtails, Mr. Kevin Altieri.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Kevin. How are you?
I'm fine. Doing okay. Yes, I guess I did give her pigtails.
Yeah, that's the legend anyway.
Truth. It's like Mike Goguen. Mike Goguen was on my crew, and Harley's in prison, and it's the first time you see her just as a person, and she's blonde. And we didn't have any character designs or anything for her, so Mike Goguen goes and puts her in, her prison outfit, and he says, but she doesn't look like Harley. And I said, well, yeah, it's because she doesn't have her, she doesn't have the, the thing, her hat on, so give her pigtails. Just, that's what stuffs her hat, is just her hair.
and it makes her recognizable to her silhouette with the cowl on, which really we can recognize Batman without the cowl on because he has that chin the size of a Buick. So give Harley something that makes her silhouette recognizable, and it makes perfect sense.
That's brilliant. Character design by that one was, I got to give Mike Goguen credit though for doing the drawing.
So, where are you located? Are you in any of the areas where these fires are going on? Are you in California?
I'm in Los Angeles. I'm actually fortunate that it's not fortunate. I mean, I bought the house intentionally, but I'm over near the ocean, much closer to the ocean. So it's not as bad today. 2 days ago, yesterday, it looked like Mars out there. Shit. Wow. Yeah, it was like, the sun comes up and it's just like the whole sky is just this red haze. It was pretty bad. I mean, but the winds seem to have shifted, so we didn't get the Santa Anas today. So it's a little bit better where I am. But yeah, the whole coast is socked in, just smoky. Wow. There's no big fires near me this year. But the last couple of years, it was pretty bad. Hollywood Hills were on fire.
Oof.
Yeah, I know. California. We go through it every year.
Sheesh.
I know.
But, let's put some of our focus on some more pleasant things for a little while. I wanted to sort of ask you for your origin story. What was your inspiration that took you to the world of art and animation and everything that you've accomplished over the years?
Well, it kind of started with Ray Harryhausen. There's two events. One was that I really remember starting to draw. I was 4 years old, and my dad took me and my brother to Milldale School, where I was going to be going in the next year. I was like 4 years old, and they were screening Seventh Voyage of Sinbad. And I had no idea what I was going to see or anything. My dad just says, "Yeah, it's got Sinbad in it." I'm like, okay. So we go there, and as usual, my dad gets us to the movie theater late. They had it in the auditorium of the grade school where I was going to be going, and we're in the auditorium, and Dad's late. We're late, so there's no credits or anything, and I see like, oh, there's these guys. That's pretty cool. They got swords and stuff, and they're walking around this island, and then they come up to this cave, and this guy comes running out, going, "Help, help!" And then the Cyclops comes out, and I'm like, holy crap balls! I had no idea. I was not prepared for this, and I was just, whoa, what is that? I knew it wasn't real, but it looked so real. And after the movie, I went home and I just started tearing up paper bags and just started trying to draw the Cyclops. And I was drawing and the Rock, and I was trying to draw the whole movie. And that's kind of what I've been doing ever since. That was actually started out. Another one was where I remember waking up in the middle of the night, and my dad is out in the living room, like watching TV. And he was watching Earth versus the Flying Saucers. And this is like I was 5. I know I was 5. Because I watched the movie with my dad, and it was like really unusual. He let me stay up late like that. But we watched Earth versus the Flying Saucers. And again, I was just riveted, I never saw anything like this. So the next day, I go to kindergarten, and I just grabbed all the construction paper, and I just started grabbed the crayons, and I just started drawing like all of these spaceships, the flying saucers crashing into the Washington Monument, the building, and I'm drawing like army guys shooting at like the domed headed guys. And I looked around, and I had like a crowd of kids around me, and they're like looking at what I'm doing. And then the teacher comes over, looks at what I'm drawing, and goes, "Oh," and scatters the kids, grabs it and tears it up. And I go, there's power here. There's something. So that's kind of what I've been doing ever since. It kind of started with Harryhausen for the most part, but of course, Johnny Quest, I've just been in love with cartoons and animation and special effects and, monster movies and just everything. It's like ever since I was a kid. And I really, it was in comics, of course, and there's just no way that I couldn't do this for a living. I have no choice.
And where was the point where you saw that, oh, this is something that I can do with my life?
It never dawned on me that I couldn't. I mean, God bless my father. My dad. Here's my dad. He's a boxer. He was a boxer. He's in the airborne in the Korean War. He's a paratrooper, staff sergeant. Kind of a tough guy. And in the whole family, my dad was the one person that says, "Hey, he wants to draw. He wants to draw." My dad was like behind me 100%. He liked comic books too. He just, didn't admit it much. But that was kind of, so I just never thought of doing anything else. I didn't know how I was going to get there, how I was going to do it. But whatever, fate took a hand, I guess.
Did you go to any art school or like film school, or how'd you get into the profession like that?
Well, I moved out to California. I mean, I went to 1 year at the Art Institute of Boston. But I was accepted at Yale. Because the Hubleys were teaching there, and it's, Gary, I was a big, Doonesbury was brand new back. in the 70s. And the Hubleys, the John and Faith Hubley, the animation couple, were teaching at Yale, and I was just jazzed to try and do that. So I sent, actually through the mail, I actually sent my portfolio to the Yale Architecture School, and they said, "Great, yep, okay, you can do it." And then I called them up and I talked to Yale on the phone, and and it was a great conversation, and he says, "Yeah, well, we're ready. We love, we think you have talent and all that." And then they said, "And it'll be about $60,000." I'm like, what? It's like that was more money than I could even imagine having. And
can I get a scholarship?
Yeah. Can I get a scholarship? And they're like, "Oh no, not for you. Do it $60,000." So then I started looking for other schools, and I ended up at the Art Institute of Boston, which was had some very good teachers, but living in Boston. And the great thing about Boston was access to the museums, like the Gardner Museum and Boston Museum. I mean, that was really essential, just learning to draw, learning the methods. I had a good life drawing teacher, Nate Goldstein. He was a great life drawing teacher, and he actually, helped a lot. But again, living in Boston, I was poor. And when winter hits in Boston, if you haven't got money, oh my God, it's like you are starving to death and cold. So, and after that, though, I was working in diners and stuff with, the Olympia Diner in Connecticut and saving up money. And my dad helped me as much as he could. And I ended up going to New Jersey to the Kubert School.
Okay.
The second year it was open. I was in the second year class, and I went to school with guys like Bissett and Toddleben and Jan Duursema. I don't know if you know. It's like she did the Star Wars comics and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And Tom Mandrake, still really good friends with them. And that's where I got most of my comic book training, that's for sure. They didn't really teach animation there. But there was a lot of good teachers, Tex Blaisdell taught inking, and things like that just really stuck with me.
But you knew that your focus wanted to be on animation and
yeah, I mean, I was kind of scattered. I mean, I love comics. I want to do comics, I do comics. I want to do comics. That was great. But I wanted to do films too. I wanted to do special effects and all that, and wanted to do cartoons. I wanted to do animation. I was a big Japanese animation fan.
Yeah.
Eighth Man. Remember that show?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Eighth Man and Astro Boy and Speed Racer. All those. Yeah. I mean, I just loved it. And so when I got out to California, again, starving for a while, for actually quite a while, but I ended up getting into special effects first. And I worked with guys like Dave Allen on movies like Robot Jocks.
I remember that.
Robot Jocks. I think the first movie, a friend of mine, Gene Rizzardi, was a model maker, and he helped get me into, got my portfolio in front of the art director at Intervision, Tim Donahue, and then I finally started working in films. And I met guys like the Kyoto brothers, Steve and Charlie Kyoto, and hung out with them in the 80s, and they helped me out a lot. And, I learned, what was it Charlie said? I started doing storyboards for live action, special effects sequences and designing effects shots for Intervision and stuff. And Charlie said, after I was doing it for about 3 months, he says, "How's it feel to be one of the top 10 live action storyboard artists in the business?" It's like, I didn't know I was, but he said it at the time.
Thanks for telling me.
Yeah, I'm like, what? And then I was doing that. I think I was working with Dave Allen, actually on a Ray Harryhausen project, the one that didn't get made, Force of the Trojans. And then there was a bunch of sequences in it where I really got to storyboard out whole action sequences, like Hercules fighting the well, they weren't harpies. I think they were harpies. They might have been harpies trying to bust into this cave where Hercules is defending, and holding them against this door. And I was designing shots where he had like this short bronze sword, and he was like just every time like a harpy would stick its head through the door, he'd just like lop it off, So you'd have like special effects with like these flying harpies, and that was actually the closest storyboard I had to actual animation. And at that time, Inspector Gadget came on, and it was like I really liked the cartoon. It was like really nicely done animation done in Japan, and that really that was really attractive to me, and it was one of the very few cartoons I liked. And they because that was a pretty bleak period for cartoons, the early 80s. If you guys remember, it was pretty bleak.
I remember watching the shit out of Inspector Gadget when I was a kid.
Yeah. And then someone told me that they were opening offices. They were a French company, a French-Japanese company, DiC, and they were opening up offices in Los Angeles. And I found out where they were in Studio City, and literally knocked on the door I had my portfolio of my I remember I had the Hercules storyboard in there, and knocked on the door, and no one was there. And I walked into this place. It was the front of a storefront where they hadn't even set up yet. And there was like a couple of guys in there, and they're saying, "Hey, what's going on?" And I'm like, "Well, is this DiC?" "Yeah, this is DiC." "Are you guys hiring?" "Yeah, we're hiring." "Can you draw?" And so I walked over, and it was Rudy Zamora was like, and God, I can't remember who it was. It was Rudy and another director. It could have been Bruno or anyway, they looked at my portfolio and said, "Can you start?" And I'm like,
wow.
"Yeah." And I'm like, it's like, "Can you start now?"
Wow. That's so crazy. You just walk in, you got the job, buddy.
Yeah, no, and I didn't know. The only training I had in actual animation storyboarding, and it was actually kind of fortuitous because I didn't get to go to school for that. But I would go to, before it fell down in the earthquake, the Northridge Mall had like these little film books from Japan. And I didn't know who it was, but at the time, because I couldn't read Japanese, but it was Miyazaki. And they had film books of Castle Cagliostro and Albatross and the TV specials that Miyazaki directed for TMS. And I got those, and that is what I studied to learn how to do storyboarding, animation style. Basically, Miyazaki was my mentor there. And Miyazaki is like, and then DiC had Japanese directors that came over with the shows, and so they were liaisoning with Japan, and they worked with satellite studios of TMS. So they actually liked my storyboards a lot and said, "Hey, this guy draws like a Japanese guy." And I'm like, that was my training. And it was a very short leap for me to do that. And it was easy to work with the Japanese studios.
Yeah.
So, that's how I got started.
And now, from beginning that way, just walking into a studio and being able to get a job, you began yourself on this path that eventually takes you to one of the most influential animated series of all time. And to explain this to you, we spend most of our time talking to comic writers and artists, and the majority of them tell us that what inspired them to begin doing what they're doing now for a living was Batman the Animated Series.
Wow.
So, given that we're looking at this circle, I wanted to talk about your interest in comics. Like, what do you love in comics?
Oh God. For me, well, I mean, it is kind of the circle of life, you know, because I was pretty much raised by Jack Kirby, you know, the Marvel Universe, more so. My Batman was the Neil Adams, Denny O'Neil Batman.
Mm-hmm.
That really hit me. I mean, I was a fan of Batman. You know, everyone was, especially, you know, the Adam West show was great. You know, it was just so goofy. But, well, actually, I take that back. At first, it wasn't that goofy because the villains always got killed, you know, and then they would show up later on. Remember, Julie Newmar, the Catwoman, falls into the bat reactor.
Right.
Oh my God! You know? And basically, the Riddler, Gorshin, in the pilot, he like gets blown up. Or was he blown up, you know? Anyway, but that was kind of my, but I wasn't really into the goofier comic books. But when Neil Adams showed up and it became much more serious,
Yeah.
that really hit me. And I was at the right age for it too. God, you know, it's like what artist would, you know, what people influenced me. It's like, you know, Alex Toth. It's like, where would I be without Alex Toth? It's like the guy's just, I loved his comics. And then I also loved I recognized his work. Before you had VHS, or you could, remember VHS? Before you could ever tape anything, it's kind of weird that I could actually memorize the credits at the end of a cartoon because I knew about Doug Wildey, I knew about Alex Toth, you know? And I recognized them because I would follow them on cartoons. And you could always recognize the style. But there were also guys that did comics, and I loved their comics. Another guy was really influential on me was Mike Ploog. My first exposure to Mike Ploog was when he was doing Werewolf by Night.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that? And you know, I didn't know about Will Eisner or any of that stuff at that time. You know, there wasn't that many books and stuff available. But yeah, Mike Ploog was a big influence on me, and of course, another animation guy.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And he was a huge influence too. And Richard Corbin. You know, when I was much too young to be buying the underground comics that I was buying, but like Fantagor and all those things by Corbin, huge influence on me. You know, I spent a lot of time trying to master an airbrush, you know, and I got pretty good at it, but because I could never figure out how Corbin just could get all that modeling and stuff down. And just like these underground comics, it was just fantastic. And well, you know, and well, it's kind of weird, but even at 13, I was always thinking about cartoons, animation, comics, kind of all rolling into one inside of my head, and I was kind of scattered, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. Oh yes, and I'm also influenced by the whole Brandywine school. You know, Howard Pyle was a hero for me because I wanted to do like historic paintings really bad. But it's so much work. It's like, where do you get the training for this? And then there's N.C. Wyeth, you know, the whole Wyeth tradition. I wanted to do that too. It was just too much.
Yeah, so many things were inspiring you to go in different directions.
Yeah, and but kind of like animation, kind of you get to do everything.
Yeah.
You know. So, yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah, that does that. Now, if we want to get in, like to go deeper into the comics, give us like a top 5 list of what you think were the best comic stories.
Oh God, it's hard to say. Obviously, for me, one that really hit me big was Denny O'Neill's, the Ra's al Ghul. That whole, from Talia, the appearance of Talia through Batman stripped to the waist in the desert dueling with Ra's al Ghul. That was great. That was great comics. And of all the things I looked at, and there's all these comics and all these characters that I loved, that one, for some reason, I was just like, at 13 years old, I just vowed that I'm going to do this as a cartoon sometime. Not as a live action movie, not as anything else, not as another comic, but I just thought I was going to do that as animation, and I actually got to do that with Denny O'Neill.
Oh, even better.
Yeah. No, that's the kind of stuff that you can't really write. You can't write that story, that I got to do that. But I did. So I actually realized a certain dream I had when I was 13.
And the power of scenes like that Denny and Neil Adams created, that influence was still being felt. Like as recent as a few years ago, there was that TV series that they did on Green Arrow that was just called Arrow.
Yep.
And they did sort of a flipped version of that where a shirtless Oliver Queen was sword fighting Ra's al Ghul on like the side of a snowy mountain. But it was, almost the same thing. Like clearly this is where that came from.
Oh yeah, no, there's no question. No question. Copycats.
Yeah.
How dare they? No, I'm kidding. It was Arrow was like one of the. I mean, I thought that was actually a pretty good series, but it was like writers like when I was growing up, Archie Goodwin. Oh my God.
Yeah.
The Warren magazines, wherever Archie Goodwin landed, it was the quality of the comic. It could be the worst dog of a comic book. And then Archie Goodwin takes it over and bam, it goes through the roof. It's fantastic.
And something that I try to point out to younger readers about guys like Archie Goodwin is a great example. Even if you haven't been reading long enough or haven't read back far enough to know these names and the work that they've produced, you still know them via the influence that they've left on the creators that you do love. None of the stuff that you're reading that's coming out now exists without those guys.
No, and absolutely, it's like everyone who's working today, doesn't acknowledge where all this comes from. Is a liar, I mean, it's like, this just popped in my head. It's like, no, that's nonsense. It's like, no, well, it's like, again, it's like I said, it's the circle of life. It's like I've trained people, it's like I got in and people, not everyone helps you out, but there were, like Hirakawa-san. I don't think he's with us anymore, but he helped me out doing storyboards Japanese style, and he helped me learned how to do timing and all those things, and I've trained people to do storyboards since, many people, I've taught classes, true, but it's like most of the teaching I've done has been on, that's just what you do. And where would I be, without artists helping me out? Or it's like where would I be if I never saw Mike Ploog's comics? Where would I be without Alex Toth doing comics? And I actually got to meet and talk to Alex Toth too.
Yeah.
And he helped, I tried to hire innocent boob that I am. I was like 26 years old and I'm on Real Ghostbusters. And
I loved that, by the way, when I was a kid. Oh,
that was so amazing.
Yeah, thank you. That was a lot of work. And that's actually the genesis of the crew on Batman, the first crew. Deke had a hell of a lot to do with it because that's where I met, it was me, Brad Rader, Dan Reba, John Calmette, who was background painter on Batman, Mike Gogan, character designer over at Deke, These were all guys that I knew. Richie Chavez, who was worked on the first couple of seasons of Batman. Ted Blackman, who was the art director of Batman. He was at Deke. We're all there together at the same time doing different jobs and different cartoons, but me and Dan, we spent a lot of time on a lot of different cartoons. Like I would be drawing, drawing, here's page, hands it off to Dan. Dan like cleans it up. Dan, here you go. Just Dan say, hey, I got an idea, and Dan will give me, oh yeah, that's pretty cool. And then we did that a lot, on a lot of cartoons. Like it was me and Dan on Ghostbusters. Oh my God, we that and when I started on Batman. I gave Dan a call. I said, hey, we're doing a real cool Batman. And what I didn't know is that Dan had already seen, he was tied in. He already knew all about it. And he's like, yes, I'm on board.
Nice.
And then, and Brad Rader was there. And it's like, and Mike Gogan came on my crew. And, it's like, and Mark Wallace, he was over at Deke too. So that's where a lot of the crew came from.
How was it that it seems like when you hear certain people who were involved with the animated series, kind of like Paul Dini, you hear him talk a lot and how he talks about how much he loves comics, but it seems like so many of the people that were involved in the show were comic fans themselves, and I think a lot of the reason the show was so great was because you guys were able to translate that world so well onto animation. Did it just work out that way, that all these people that were working on the show just happened to be comic fans, or did you guys kind of find, how did that happen?
Well, I mean, Bruce and Eric, they were having kind of a hard time finding people who could draw this stuff this way, like Dan, me, and Brad and Mike Gogan. We would sit there at Deke watching Fleischer Supermans on these really crappy VHS copies, because you couldn't see it any place else. And we were just, in love with the Fleischer Supermans. And we were trying to, and obviously Miyazaki was, it was a huge influence on Japanese animation, the Fleischer brothers, believe it or not. And we were trying to figure out how to do all these techniques and things while we're at Deke. And that kind of look is what Bruce and Eric were trying to grab for. That was actually a mandate from Gene McCurdy to do a Fleischer-style cartoon, which hadn't been done in a long time. And back at that time, it was the height of the goofy, even the superhero cartoons that were done were super dumb and goofy, and no violence of any sort.
Yeah, people couldn't be punched.
No, not at all. Not at all. And those rules were still in effect. Tiny Toons kind of cracked that a bit, because all of a sudden you had slapstick humor coming back, which didn't exist. But over at when we were starting out, Eric and Bruce had a hard time finding people who could draw superhero stuff or just human figure kind of things. And we had a full layout crew, and it was really difficult at first just to find people that could draw this kind of stuff. Like people, even if people liked it, if you're working in animation for a long time, you ain't drawing, you wouldn't be drawing realistic style animation unless you were working for maybe Disney Features. Disney had some good stuff too at that time. They were doing Ducktales, which was really good. I don't know if you guys remember that.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the Disney afternoon in general was a good staple. Yeah.
Yeah, no, Goof Troop was actually a good cartoon too. They just made the mistake of putting it up against Batman in the same.
Oh, that slot.
It was not fair. I mean, it's like, really, Disney? You think, like you couldn't? I mean, I like the cartoon, but it's like, up against Batman, it's like, well,
Yeah,
It's like the only thing that can beat a Disney cartoon.
yeah. Anyway, so yeah, at first it was very difficult to find people who could actually draw that. As a matter of fact, on Leather Wings, that was me, Brad, and Dan, and Kurt Gaeta doing the storyboards for that one. And it really ran into a snag when it got to layout, because the layout was all done in-house, had a full layout crew. And I would get the layouts and I'd go, oh my God. It's like, really? It's like, I is this Batman or is this Papa Smurf? Really? And the guys say, well, that was good enough for such and such. And it's like, this guy ain't gonna last long. And many of them didn't. But eventually, so that first episode, we really worked on the layouts a lot. We ended up redrawing a whole lot of it. And again, we're, me, Brad, Dan, we weren't layout artists. Bruce actually did layouts too, now that I remember it. And Kurt. So pretty much when anybody drew a sequence, they ended up storyboarding, doing the layouts to match their own storyboards. And that's like backgrounds and everything. So that kind of is how why the quality was there. And eventually, the layout crew got better and they hired better and better people that were really jazzed about drawing in a realistic. It's not really realistic, but it's like a realistic style.
Yeah.
Yeah. People showed up. And the problem back then too was all the other studios, including Deke, paid a lot more than Warner Brothers did. Warner Brothers was never the most. They didn't pay better than anyone else. They paid less. And at first, it was hard for me to find. Whenever you tried to get a freelance storyboard artist or a designer, and you'd give them the price, and they say, "Well, I could get more than that from Disney." And it's like, well, go to Disney because Warner Brothers is not going to give you any more. But you won't be able to draw Batman.
And right from that first episode, the quality that was being produced, when we spoke to Paul Dini, we spoke specifically about On Leather Wings. And when we discussed that segment where Batman is, hanging from Man-Bat as they're flying around the rafters of that building that's being constructed, Paul speaks as excitedly about that as anyone I've ever heard. And that's crazy that someone who was part of the series is still that excited about the product that came out of it.
Yeah, well, that's kind of I shouldn't say it, it's a secret weapon that we have. We actually really enjoy the stuff. They're just like, it's a curse and it's and a blessing at the same time. Because, it's great that you really enjoy, especially when you can pull something off like that comes out. That I was very satisfied with many of the shots on Leather Wings, and boy, coming from Deke, or even I was at Disney Features doing development on Lion King, and there's just no gratification at all, because everything you do is just it's just like one tiny cog in the whole thing. And at Deke, sometimes you'd get some good animation, but man, that was a struggle to just get any kind of quality. And here you have, and finally, On Leather Wings, when the animation came back, and they showed it in the theater, I had been seeing it on a moviola, small. Yeah, obviously, because, that's another thing too about Warner Brothers is like, Well, it was the same at Deke, but you were really hands-on with the editors too. You know, when the footage came back, the directors are sitting there with the editor, and you know, you're cutting the picture with the editor. So you're really hands-on in almost every single aspect of it. And then you have a genius like Shirley Walker doing music. Now that was awesome.
Still undefeated.
Yeah, no, I mean, when the music was done and Shirley like actually says, you know, well, just as a for instance, she calls me up on the phone and says, "Would you mind coming down to the lot? You know, and I'm working out some stuff, you know, and it's a show you directed. You know, it was a Two-Face Part 1, I think. Anyway, yeah, it's just like, you know, Bruce and I, you know, Bruce, you know, I think Bruce drove, I can't remember, but it's like Bruce and I go over there and we go walk into this, you know, sound stage. Oh, this is really nice, you know, and there's like the whole orchestra up there. And then Shirley's like, yeah, okay, now I'm thinking about this for right here. Here, now just take a look, you know. And then they cue picture, beep, 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 and then the orchestra's going, and Bruce and I are just like with our mouths open. And then ta-da, boom. And she turned out, now, what did you think about that? And we're like, no, really, seriously, I want your opinion. I'm like, all I can say is great. It's like, you know, I still don't even remember what problem she was trying to overcome.
and she had no idea that, you know, 25 years from now, people are going to have tiny phones in their pockets that when they ring, it's going to play that song because they've made that their ringtone.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's like, yeah, no, that was like another aspect that Warner Brothers, you know, that was more than I'd ever encountered up to that point. It was like, that was like one of the most wonderful things ever, is to watch, you know, a cartoon where the animation comes back and I'm really actually jazzed by the animation and the art of the animators. And then you have someone who just gives equal love and attention and talent to the music. It's unbelievable.
I have a question, and it may be a little complicated, but in the animation, I just want to know how one directs an animated show versus, like, you know, a live action where they're dealing with actors and they're, you know, telling them how to do that. But how does one direct an animated show? Are you there with the voice actors while they're doing their lines, and are you with the artists and telling them, well, I want this from this angle and whatnot?
Yeah, no, you're doing a lot of pointing and screaming. You know,
well, you're fired.
Oh, no, yeah. No, it's not. It's like, no, it first off, as a director, and I'll say this, and some people may be pissed off about it or not, but no director worth their salt, you know, is not a storyboard artist. You know, every good director is generally a superb storyboard artist. And so, you know, you dive in and you're part of the team. Is like, for me as a director, you hire people that you have absolute confidence in their abilities. So, like, my crew, and whenever the company would hire some extra guy, you know, it was always a problem. You know, that there's like someone who's not into it or someone's not up to the skills of the other artists. But like, I'd hire, like, I had no problem with like Brad Rader, Dan Reba, Mike Gogan. You know, if they're my crew, it's not a question of like, it's a question of all of us getting together and me talking about what I want. You know, like, this is going to be the Hitchcock moment. And you remember that moment in in Young and Innocent, where the car goes crashing down through in the mine, and they're like, "What are you talking about?" "No, I'll show it to you." And going like, we'll look at videotapes and stuff, and it was like that. That's kind of how the directing is when you have a crew of people that you can really count on, and you're going to love the drawings that they're doing, and you don't. And we had worked together before, so basically it's me storyboarding what I want. And then if there's something that Brad or Dan drew that it was like, I suddenly would go, "Oh, wait, suppose we did this." And then you dive in and you change. That's how that worked on Batman. Okay. Voice directing, we had Andrea Romano.
Yes. Right.
And I'd been working with actors a lot, and I had done voice directing myself at Deke. Which you had to do, Marcia Goodwin was the general voice director. I worked with Michael Hack, who was another voice director. But at Deke, you were kind of, when you were working with the actors, they were much cheaper too. So it was down and dirty. So you really had to work with the actors very quickly, and you just knew they weren't going to be there very long. So you ended up doing a lot of things you wanted, you didn't want, or anyway, you work with Andrea Romano, and she'll say, "Who do you see for this voice?" If you wanted an actor, like, I'll just pick Ra's al Ghul, for instance. She came out and says, "Who do you see? Who do you see?" And it's like, well, it's got to be an English guy. And so we're going like, could it be Patrick Stewart? And it's like, oh, he'd be too expensive. Or Michael York. Yeah, let's get Michael York. And Andrea was like, yeah, we can get Michael York. So she got Michael York. But then she called up and says, "What do you think of David Warner?" "Oh my God, David Warner." It's like, that's perfect. "How did you get him?" It's like, oh, she has her sources. And Andrea would pick actors, would find the actors for you. And when you go to a recording with Andrea, we'd be sitting there, it would be me, Paul, and Bruce sitting on the couch, and we have our notes and we have our script, and we're listening. And the way that Andrea would do it, she'd get all the actors in the booth together, so they're acting off of each other, and it's like a beautiful radio play, and we'd just be listening. And there are moments where there's specific things I have in my head of what I want, like, for instance, Tim Curry was the first Joker.
Yeah.
And I keep using this one as an example, but he's like, there's like the moment where Tim Curry, I think the read was something like, "We wouldn't want our little rodent to suffocate, so we'll just punch some air holes." And it's like, I would go and say, "Could you give that punch a better punch?" And he's like, "Oh, sure thing." And it's like, you do it. That's kind of like where your influences as a director would come in. But Andrea, she would do it all, and she would generally have her own notes. And then after the actors have done everything, everyone goes out and takes a break, and they're intermingling and having a good time. And then you have a conference with Andrea, and you show, here, this is the only things I got to say. And she says, "Well, I'm going to do this." And then Andrea has things that you're going, "Oh my God, that's brilliant." So that was the good thing about that place, is at that time, is that everyone was like on the top of their game,
Including your job a lot easier.
Oh yeah, it's like, I didn't know who Kevin Conroy was,
What was your first impression of Kevin?
Good. I mean, number one, I would go and say, well, nothing against Michael Keaton, but he should be in the live action movie. He even looks like him. He had the jaw. It's like,
and he was tall.
Yeah. And by the way, Michael Keaton in the last, the Spider-Man Homecoming, he's great. He's absolutely great. But I think one of the dumbest things I've ever seen is the fact that here's Michael Keaton, fresh off of doing Beetlejuice with the same director, and he's Batman, and he's not the Joker. I thought Michael Keaton would have been a great Joker, but whatever. Yeah, anyhow, but Kevin Conroy, that guy is like, he looked like Batman, you know.
And that's another thing that you guys were creating this at that time, and gave the world what would still be Batman. To this day, Kevin Conroy is the voice I hear when I'm reading a Batman comic.
Yeah, no, and it's, I mean, Christian Bale, I'm sorry, man, but what's the gravel voice?
Yeah, when I read a Batman comic, I don't read it like this.
Yeah, it's like
no thanks.
And it's like, and Ben Affleck, same thing, it's like, it just, I want to see you bleed. It's like, what are you talking like that, man? And I love the thing about when we would have Bruce Wayne as Bruce Wayne, like in the past, you realize that Batman's voice is his voice. When he talks with Talia and he's Bruce Wayne, and he's talking with Talia in, like, say, Avatar. It's like, no. As Bruce Wayne, when he's with Talia, who knows who he is, it's just his voice. Batman's voice is his voice. It's the Bruce Wayne Playboy voice is a put-on.
Yeah.
That higher register, that's an act. Batman is really who he is.
Yeah.
That was
interesting. And that's an important thing for the actor to get.
Pardon me, say that again?
An important thing for the actor to get is, what side of Batman is the real side, and what side, what side is Bruce.
Yeah. Well, with Kevin Conroy, it was like, I mean, the conversations happened, but once the conversation happens once or twice, it's like, but no, he gets it. It's like that's who he is. It's like, he became the guy. That was his persona. It's like Mark Hamill is the Joker. It's like, oh my God. It's like, you didn't have to tell that guy what to do. It's like
he's got Arkham in his name.
Yeah, no, Mark Hamill would just take off. Or like Arlene Sorkin as Harvey.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a full-on, full-blooded character. There was, you wouldn't tell her what to do. I mean, I did a couple of times. I think the only time is like where she in Harley Quinn where she fires her weapon at the Joker, and she goes, "Try this one on, Puddin'." And I said, "No, you're mad at him. I want pudding." And it's like, and she just, "Oh, I get it," and then she's like, "Try this one on for size, pudding," which makes the Joker.
But I guess there's not a lot you can tell to the person who the character was created for, right? Like, Paul creating Harley with Arlene in mind.
Oh yeah, no, he knew they knew what it was going to be. Yeah, I mean, it's like Paul. I mean, he would describe it to me. He'd come into my office and talk to me about it a lot. But I'd say, no, that sounds really cool, Paul. But I didn't know that she was going to be from it sounds like she's from Queens or Long Island. It's like that was Arlene. That was like a revelation. That was awesome.
And talking about the quality of the people that were contributing, their own parts to this. One of the episodes that you directed, the second part of Feats of Clay,
yes.
That was, going back to the comic world, that was a Marv Wolfman story.
Yeah.
Did you get to work at all with Marv, bringing that one to life?
Yeah, but that was one of the scripts that was a real problem script. And I wouldn't blame Marv for that. It was like, it was a good story, but there was things in it, like, it was just too much. And especially part 2, where he's manifesting his powers for the first time. And, well, I'll give you, for instance, the things that you do as a director. The there's a scene in there where Batman's punching the wall, and I had to take the hospital sequence myself because I couldn't really describe it to another board artist of what you have to do. And Alan Burnett really wanted him punching the wall and that jar wiggling. And I said, this is impossible with the budgets we have. It's like, are you really kidding? You kidding me? Well, TMS actually pulled it off. But then in comes the cop, which is Clayface in disguise, And Clayface is this is one of the very first times that we see, where he's actually impersonating another person, a human being. And he goes, I'll take it from here, And Batman, in the script, Batman goes, okay, officer, and he leaves with germs. And then Batman goes, wait a minute, that was not the correct uniform. That was a uniform from something or other. And then, you being a detective, he chases down the cop, and they meet outside, and then they get into a fight. And then it reveals that he's Clayface. And we go, well, that's like 3 or 4 pages that I got to get rid of because it's like I got to lose pages out of this script. It was just too long. So instead, it's like, I'll take it from here. Wait a minute. And then, of course, he just telescopes his arm out, and that's the first time he really manifests his powers and slams Batman against the wall. And it's like, boom, 5 pages gone. So you're actually creating.
Marv wrote you a movie that you had to turn into the episode.
Yes. And it's like, no, and it's like, but it's true to Marv's script. He liked it a lot. I mean, he was very satisfied with it. I don't think the story editors were very happy with me, but whatever. You're changing the script without permission. And it's like, no, I talked to Alan Burnett and I talked to Bruce. It's there was just no time. I mean, that's also part of the whole thing was people don't really realize so much about Batman, the animated series, was, that was on a tight schedule and a tight budget. It wasn't like there may be some episodes where a lot of money was spent, but like Feet of Clay, the boards went out, they went overseas, went to TMS, and what you see, I think I can only remember maybe 2 or 3 retakes in that whole episode. The animation just came back as it is. It was beautiful. And they did it a week early, Wow. So it was on schedule, on time, and on budget.
Now, you talk about the limitations of the budget, and that's definitely to be expected when something is starting and it's unproven. Was it something that changed over time when the success of the show was being seen?
Not really. I mean, the budgets really didn't change. I think it was pretty much the same. They weren't spending more money, or it pretty much stayed the same. They spent a considerable budget on music, obviously.
Yeah.
But animation wise, they were pretty competitive with every other studio. I think the only studio that may have spent more was Disney. But there was like to quote a number, I think it was like $500,000 an episode total. Some things may have been over that, some may have been under. But yeah, no, I think even Sony Animation and those places were spending more. It's the people you hire, if you have talented people, basically you get the drawings and you get the style and you get the design that you want. And they had a good relationship with the overseas studios too. And the overseas studios felt like they were part of the creative process. They were kind of included in the creativity of it. Did that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I stepped on Gramps a couple times here while he was trying to ask something, so I'm gonna shut up and let him go ahead.
Okay. Well, I have a friend that he loves Hardak.
No.
And he even has some of the Mondo. Have you seen the Mondo print posters that they made?
Yeah.
Do you have any of those?
Yeah, I don't have them. No, I mean, but I've actually I've gotten some cards and stuff, and I think, oh yes, here's one. This was a gift.
Oh, yeah. For you to play.
Yeah.
That is nice.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess my question would be, and it's kind of a two-parter. One, do you collect some of the stuff from the animated series, like as we just saw? And also,
here, wait, I'm gonna.
this is your time to flex.
I'll show you my foyer.
Yeah.
In my house.
Oh, okay. And if you could describe it, so we can. Oh my God!
Oh, sure.
Oh, there we go.
Oh my God!
See,
Wait, first, what is that? That looks like some original art of Mr. Freeze there.
Yeah, that's Mike Mignola.
Oh man!
Wow,
jeez,
that's like a full page. Okay, so just for the listeners, that is a Mike Mignola original. Looks like about the size of a full
Mr. Freeze
page.
over Batman. Yeah.
Oh my God, that is beautiful.
That was a splash page from one of the Batman specials.
Wow.
It's like,
and along the wall are boxed.
There's the Harley.
Yeah, animated figure series.
There's the Batmobile.
Yeah. That's the foyer in my house.
Wow. So do you ever have anybody that? Do you ever have anybody that doesn't know what you do come over and they see something like that?
Well, I mean, I was married for like 18 years, but I probably shouldn't say this, but it's like if you're dating someone, and they come over the house and it's like, you got a lot of toys.
Hey, you know what?
It's like, this ain't gonna work out.
Kevin, you know what? You can. Here, this is an open invitation. We also do a YouTube show called Grumps and Gramps where we talk about the fig life. So you can come on to that anytime.
Okay.
Now,
you're
oh yeah, there's a second part. Go ahead.
Would you say that Hardak is more inspired by Blade Runner or Terminator?
Both. And it was completely intentional. It was Bryn Stevens wrote that, and I actually worked with her, another person from Deke. She was a story editor on Starcom, and she's a fan, of science fiction and stuff. So it would be equal, Of course, we got Rossum.
Yeah.
I mean, that's Blade Runner, but it's both. It's both, But where the robots, when they had to be very robotic when you break down to what they are, because we beat the hell out of them. It was one of the times it's like, it's a robot, you can do whatever you need to. They you want to crash them down in the we were very inventive and really went off script quite a lot when it came to the robots.
So I'm assuming, like, with the film and TV standards, you couldn't do so much to a human character, but you could beat the shit out of a robot character, right?
Oh, absolutely. We found that out at Deke. On Starcom, it's like, that was back in the day when you couldn't do any violence at all, really. You couldn't do any punches to the head, except that Emperor Dark had his minions, who were robots. And they look like robots. They look like Cylons or something. So, and that was done they're humanistic, but they're definitely robots without personality. So when they got shot, and the animation studio, I would have on Starcom, I would have horrible animation, and I'm struggling to make this work. And then you get to the moment where the robots are getting shot up, and the animation is lavish. They put everything into that moment. Anyway, it kind of carries over into that storyboard came in really long, and I actually had to cut out stuff that I really didn't want to cut out. Like there was a whole confrontation and fight between Batman robot and Batman. That was the climax. And then Barbara Gordon jumps in and kind of saves Batman's bacon at the last minute. and the Batman robot is destroyed. That I had to cut out just because every time a robot would reveal itself, every storyboard artist would just give it everything they had, myself included. So do I have a Batman robot, or are we going to have Marilyn Monroe robot with her face torn half off, and and have that moment? So that's how it was. Just every artist got carried away.
Very fun. Very fun.
So we're talking all about Batman the Animated Series, but I can see there you're rocking a Connor Kent look with that T-shirt you're wearing there. So some Young Justice vibes.
How dare you?
It's okay.
Yeah. Now, how did things differ? Was there any change in the way things were being done when you were working on Batman the Animated Series to when it comes to the point where you're doing Young Justice?
Oh, it's completely different. I mean, Warner Brothers was when I was there, it was pretty much Tom Ruegger and Gene McCurdy were the people you had to, they were in charge, and they were the producers who were in charge, and you had to please them. And after Batman, I was doing Gen 13, had an office down at the beach, and I was doing Gen 13. Warner Brothers completely changed management. It was just different people, totally different people. And so even if Bruce is still there or whatever, Young Justice was a completely different experience, totally different setup. And it's like it's very cool stuff. But it's like the company was totally different when I came back. And I was on Young Justice, but I was also on a lot of the direct-to-video Scooby-Doos. And at that point, Warner Brothers kind of had a tendency to hire you for the duration of the project, and then you're gone. And then they'll hire people back. Whereas when Gene McCurdy was there, they were trying to hang on to everyone that was on the cruise. The Tiny Toons people rolled over into Freakazoid or into Animaniacs, and the Batman people would roll over into Superman. But I was like in between. I ended up doing Gen 13, totally independent of any of the studios. So, it was a very different experience, completely different. And of course, Greg Weisman's, it's an entirely different thing because Greg's stuff is like these giant, involved, huge, interlocking storylines. It's a totally different thing.
Now, what's the level of difference when you're doing an episodic series like Batman the Animated Series or the work on Young Justice versus when you're doing something that's more of a feature film style like Mask of the Phantasm?
Well, Mask of the Phantasm it was more of an extension of Batman the Animated Series. Mm-hmm. It was done pretty much on the same schedule, a regular episode. There wasn't like a lot more attention lavished onto Mask of the Phantasm, except that now instead of G, we could be PG.
Yeah.
So there's a bit more. You can go a little more extreme.
Yeah, and it did. You've got like Joker with blood in his mouth, and
that's my fault. I did.
Yeah.
Nice. I drew that. No, I mean I love drawing the Joker. I love drawing the sequences. It's like and I love the whole World's Fair with the miniature city. I pulled rank. I had to do that myself.
And that movie still holds up so well, and that's another one of the things that has inspired current comic creators to the point that the upcoming Batman Catwoman miniseries, maxi series from Tom King and Clay Mann. Clay had been bugging Tom and actually, enlisted me to help bug Tom. We were picking at Tom to do this Phantasm story because Clay wanted to be the first artist to do Phantasm in the main continuity comics. So that movie is still being felt in comics.
Yeah, no, I thought it was. I think that's actually a better Batman year one than anyone else has come up with. I think that story. I mean, that genesis of that guy, that Bruce Wayne, who you can see why he takes all of his wealth and all of his time and his effort and works as hard as he does to be Batman, and why he continues to be Batman. Whereas the guys in the movies now, I don't know why they would ever want to be Batman. You know, oh, it's like I'm all screwed up. You know, oh, my mom's dead, my dad's dead. You know, and I mean, well, it's not that. You know, it's not that. So it's simple, and it's like, and I mean, I'm not saying they're bad movies, but I'm just saying that the Batmobile ripping across town and all these cars, these parked cars, and traffic is getting smashed aside and buildings are getting collapsed, blown up. It's like, what the hell is he doing?
Who's going to pay for that?
Yeah, it's like, are you kidding me? It's like, he would never do that.
That's another fun thing though that has been like we've come so far that things like that have now been addressed in comics. In Sean Murphy's Batman White Knight, he wrote into sort of the governing of Gotham City that there was this funding put in place called the Batman Devastation Fund, and that it was what was paying for all of this damage that happened because of Batman.
Yeah, no. I mean, the plain facts is that, you know, Batman preserves things. You know, he's a super do-gooder, and it's the same with Superman. You know, it's like the whole thing of Superman destroying the city, and it's like, no, Christopher Reeve's Superman. They made the point when he's attacked in the city, and as soon as he sees that people are getting hurt, he goes. You know, he cuts. He leaves because it's like the damage that's happening just because he's fighting these villains, you know, is the reason for him to like retreat, so no one else gets unnecessarily hurt. And the damage, you know, he takes it out of the city. Whereas like that, you know, that's a reaction. That's why that guy is Superman. You know, it's the same with Batman. Batman doesn't use guns. You know, he doesn't use weapons. Although against mummy monsters and things like that, I do have him. He does have some percussion grenades. You know? But
that's one of the big differences between why the animated series and animated movies always grab the appeal for most of like comic readers. There are people that, you know, there's a difference between the animated shows and live action shows. Each one has their own, you know, things you can appreciate, but comic readers really tend to gravitate towards the animated series and the animated movies because it's like watching your books come to life.
Yeah. Well, there's actually Archie Goodwin. There was one moment in Archie Goodwin wrote the Batman that he wrote. He also did like the Manhunter that Walt Simonson was drawing.
Mm-hmm.
And the Manhunter is a manhunter. He is a murderer. You know, it's like he's not a murderer, but he fights to win, and he's a killer. That is what he was. And then you have the crossover, Goddard Dameron, where Batman and Manhunter are going to, you know, clash. And they end up joining forces. But before they join forces, Manhunter makes the statement. He says, well, Batman says, count me in, because Manhunter says there's this giant cabal of, you know, genius people who are trying to take over the world, who are planning on taking over the world, or are running things, and they're evil, and they must be stopped. And we are going to stop them. And Batman says, count me in. And the Manhunter is like, sorry, Batman, but this isn't your show. Because you won't kill, and this is a killing mission. And that's true. And it's like, and even in that, it's like Batman does not kill. He never will. He won't do it, no matter what. That's the other thing in The Killing Joke. Push as hard as the Joker does, Batman still won't kill him at the very end. Even when the Joker's fighting so dirty, like he'll just pull out a gun and pull out a knife, and he claws at Batman's eyes, trying to blind him. And at the end, Batman still hauls him off to prison. He's not going to kill him. He won't do it.
And thank you for saying that, because that's one of the 2 points. There are 2 points in The Killing Joke that people have debated over the years, and one of them is right there at the end. A lot of people contend that what they believe is being insinuated is that Batman killed the Joker.
No.
But I never felt that way at all. And in the past year or two, the Absolute Edition of Killing Joke was released, and it contains Alan Moore's original script for it. And it says, nowhere in there does it say anything about, Batman kills him at the end, or make it look like it does. Not at all. So there.
No, it's like in the Joker finally succeeds as a stand-up comic at the very end.
Mm-hmm. Yep, finally.
It's like it comes. And that it's a great ending. It's not satisfying. Personally, I think creating Oracle out of Barbara Gordon was a cop-out for the rest of the people. She could have recovered. She could have recovered and continued being Batgirl. No reason not to. It's like they want. I don't know why Oracle had to happen, but there you go.
We did get her back eventually.
Yep.
To rewind a bit, I didn't even think to mention this while we were talking about Mask of the Phantasm. I don't know if the microphone picked up the noise, but my dog ran into the room at that time, and his name is Beaumont. He's named for Andrea Beaumont.
Okay.
Anyway, I'll let somebody else say something.
My question is, you spearheaded one of the greatest shows in animation history, one of the first episodes, considered the first episode. Like, in retrospect, how does that feel, like, to be part of history in this genre?
Well, I don't. It's great. It's great. I'm really happy that people, that's kind of like one of my dreams from when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Was to actually, do something that continues on and that people really, really like and love.
And like back in the early 90s, West Coast, the riots, all that stuff, like, could you ever imagine, like, how this series has just become such a classic, like a staple, like, or you guys were just in the moment at the time, I imagine.
When I was doing it, Dan Reba always made fun of me and Bruce, because I was just like oblivious, I'm working like a son of a bitch, and working as hard as I could, and just doing the job, but I really never envisioned it like being as widely received as ever, until I went up to one of the WonderCons when it was up in Oakland, and at that point I kind of knew Denny O'Neil a little bit, and Denny O'Neil was like at the DC booth at the WonderCon, and he says, "Hey Kevin, we're showing your cartoon today." I'm like, "Really?" "Oh yeah." He says, "Yeah, no, we love it, man. We love it." It's like, "Yeah, you gotta come to the showing. Gotta come to the screening." Okay. So I go there, and I think it's going to be like a typical Comic-Con thing. It's like where there's like, a room, some people in it. And I go there, and the auditorium's packed with people. Like, I'm like, what the hell? And the audience reaction actually caught me by surprise, because there's this one kid in front of me. And I just sat down. I was actually had 3 or 4 beers across the street at the pub. So I was not ready. And I go in there, and I'm like, as Batman is like riding Man Bat, this kid in front of me is going, I can't believe they did it. I can't believe they did it. I can't believe they did it. I can't believe this. I don't believe it, And I was like, wow. And just the audience reaction was just tremendous. And that's the first time that I had any inkling of, that it was going to be that popular. Gratifying but embarrassing at the same time, because when the lights come up, Denny O'Neil comes out and says, I think the director's here, Kevin. I'm like, oh man, I'm half soused. I don't know what I'm gonna say. It was pretty cool though. It was very cool. Yeah.
Well, obviously, we all love talking about the things that we've known you so well for most of our lives, but you definitely have some other things that you're working on right now, don't you?
Oh yeah.
What can you tell us about the new stuff?
Well, there's one project that I'm doing. There's one that's like it's mine. I don't want to talk about it yet.
Oh, come on.
But then there's another one that's created by Gary Wolfe, who's a creator of Roger Rabbit. It's Killer Bowl, and it's a science fiction epic that takes place in the future, or an alternate future, I think. And it's kind of like it's about the game taking like combat skills into the game of football, kind of like. And it's a science fiction epic, but it's like, I just talked to Gary yesterday, and really great guy. It's going to be fun. And we're putting the crew in. We're just starting out with that one, Killer Bowl.
Killer Bowl.
Yeah.
Are you going to get any like pro football players to voice act in it?
No.
Oh.
It's not the point. But it's still, we're just starting. It's just starting in development, and I've been talking to him. We're putting that together right now.
You should get Tom to do a character. Tom is a really good voice actor.
A football player?
Just killer. Just give us your best killer voice right now, Tom.
Well, where exactly is it like taking place?
In the future.
In the future? I guess in the future, though, there's still probably like. The thing about the future is there's still like East Coast like accents, like it's like a football player would be like, oh, I gotta make it through the half or else they're gonna kill us, something like that.
But what
that.
What if like the quarterback is Jason Statham?
Oh well, you gotta make sure you run your routes, make sure everyone's doing what they gotta do.
There we go. Had to get that one in there. Oh, what about the coach of the team is Dan DiDio.
The what?
The coach of the team is Dan DiDio.
Hey guys, we got to make sure that we get up in there. We really give them a good wallop. You got to make sure that you're doing a good job. You want to get hydrated at the halftime. You want to make sure you're eating your orange peels.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's gonna be
we give it a try. That was dumb. But so what kind of timeline do you think before we start hearing anything about that then?
Well, like I said, we're just getting started. But the intention of the Killer Bowl is, and it's also an alternate title. I don't know. It's either going to be Street Lethal or Killer Bowl.
Killer Bowl. Just
Street Lethal's a pretty good title too. But,
yeah, I like that too.
But the Killer Bowl kind of, it's just, we're just getting off the ground right now. So it's going to be a while, and that is a feature project.
Lethal Bowl.
Yeah, no.
I do like Street Lethal because it's like a play on Street Eagle.
Yeah. No. It's like, again, and it's like, I got the script, and Gary's a good writer. It's a really good script, And there's a few other projects too that are out there, It's the interesting thing with the whole COVID situation. and one advantage that I do have is that in the past I have worked remotely with artists and with all the aspects with the actors and all of that. So it's it's actually kind of working to my advantage, to my skill set. Actually, I can actually get this off the ground and running.
Have you found that you've had more time to? I know, like, guys like you are always working, so it's hard to slow down and like take in what's kind of out there. But have you had more time during this quarantine to kind of like consume more art and get an appreciation for things that you might have missed?
Not well, sort of. I mean, I've gotten into my garage and cleaned my garage out, and I found books that I've had since I was 6.
Whoa.
Yeah. It's actually been kind of cool that I've been able to do that.
That's awesome.
And so actually I have, and I've been unboxing stuff that's been boxed for a while, and no, it is pretty cool. And it's like the advantage of being like one of the original geek nerds that I am is that I live in a library toy shop.
Awesome.
Yeah. And I mean, I have been able to, the only bummer was that I couldn't go surfing daily like I was used to doing. Because they had to close the beaches because people just cannot behave themselves.
Yeah.
But I have been surfing, I have been surfing off and on. So that's good. And I live near enough to the ocean. So,
that's awesome.
So it's like I haven't been shut in totally. But no, and I've been rereading books that I dug out that I haven't read for 20 years, 20, 30 years, 40 years, some of them.
Is any of that renewing any of the old inspiration and giving you any new ideas? Maybe some of these other projects you don't want to talk about? You big tease?
I don't. God, I'm looking around. It's like there's things here. No, I don't dare. It's just like it's like some of them are in like it's like there's one that I will share with you guys when I can. It's like, but it's in the point where the deals are kind of starting to be made, and you don't want to start talking about it. It's, Killer Bull has been announced, and another one is Axe Saloon, which is a Western, kind of a mystical Western, romance, action adventure romance that takes place in California, as a matter of fact, in like 1870s California. And it's kind of a retelling of Romeo and Juliet with an Indian, Chumash Indian kid, young man, and a girl that's immigrant from Europe, an English girl, and kind of a retelling of that in the Old West.
Interesting.
With Chumash Indian legends and lore tied in with it, kind of
That's awesome.
It could be, it's like my intention doing that is I really want that to be, the American, Princess Mononoke. Anyway, that's another project, Axe Balloon. And then there's, I don't know if I'm supposed to talk about it, and there's another one from Gary Wolf called Ranger Raccoon, which is more of a fun thing, which is more of a Tex Avery kind of feature film, action adventure, but it's got real comedy Tex Avery overtones to it.
Cool.
Yeah.
I did want to ask, and I hope this is not too personal a question. Did you ever, were you ever able to, was your father ever able to see your animation work in the films and stuff come to life and be like, see, my support for him finally came through?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. My dad was there for the whole ride. My dad passed away just a couple of years ago.
Okay.
But yeah, no, he had a good long life, and My dad was tough as nails, but yeah, no, he was. Oh yeah, no, he had his Batman crew jacket. He had his Disney jackets.
Nice.
My
That's
dad,
cool.
no,
That's
my
cool.
dad really, he got to see it, and my mom, and they both, were really happy that with how things turned out, and they're really,
Awesome.
and they're really, really supportive of, what I've done.
I'm glad to hear that. I'm really glad to hear that.
Yeah. No, it was great. It was like when I was first working in Hollywood, it was like, yeah, when I was still living with my dad because he moved out here. It was, he was like my wingman.
Right.
He was a pain in the ass.
Most are, but yes,
But he
they.
was yeah, and it was pretty good. It was pretty good, and it was like, and it was really great when things started happening.
Very cool. Very cool.
No, it's like, and I miss my dad, but yeah, but what are you gonna do? It's like, but I am grateful that he lived as long as he did and got to see things like Batman come to fruition. And he actually, Mark Singer, who was Man Bat, was at my dad's gym. So my dad would actually talk to Mark Singer about me all the time.
Wow.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
It's before we let you go, it's about that time of spooky season, but you were talking about how one of the earliest things you remember, Sinbad, the big Cyclops. You also, the aliens were a huge influence. Anything like any monster movies or anything like Halloween themed that you love that still sticks with you from when you were a kid?
Oh God. Yeah. I mean, the Universal monsters.
Yeah.
I mean, of course. I mean, it's like, and especially I had a real affinity for the Wolfman.
Yes.
And Hammer films. I'm just a huge
yeah.
fan. Just name it. Christopher Lee is a god.
Yeah.
Just and Oliver Reed. I actually got to work on one movie doing special effects, Two of a Kind, with John Travolta, Olivia Newton-John, and Oliver played the devil.
Oh.
I got to sit down with Oliver Reed and tell him how much I loved him as a werewolf.
That's awesome.
That was awesome, and I didn't get to party with him, but it's probably okay.
Hey, Gramps, do you think we can fire off a couple quick lightning round questions here before we let Kevin get on his way?
Before his battery dies?
Well, we just, with our guests, we like to have a little fun. As we got to know you and your professional, now we ask some silly personal questions just for fun.
Okay.
Now you're from the East Coast, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So do you like New York style pizza or what the hell they have out in California?
Don't even talk about it. Pizza from Meriden, Connecticut buries anything else. There's just no question. And they don't have a decent fried clam on the West Coast. Sorry.
Okay, do you like Shake Shack burgers or In-N-Out?
Oh, I don't eat burgers.
Okay.
Oh.
Well, there we go.
I don't eat cow.
Okay.
It's too much like eating a big dog.
Well, I don't know about that, but they might be delicious too then.
Yeah, no, it's like I'm a sucker. East Coast food, man. I want fried clams so bad. It's they have a few places that sell whole belly clams out here, but it ain't the same. Just going to Connecticut, New Jersey, New York, New England, all New England, like my family's from Maine. Oh my God. The food. And the pizza. The pizza. There is no pizza here.
See, Tom, no pizza.
Artisan flatbreads.
Sorry, everyone's gonna be mad at me now. You don't like our pizza?
No, I think they know you're telling the truth.
Yeah.
What's your favorite like kind of candy snack?
I don't know. I don't really eat candy.
Oh, okay.
No cows or candy.
Baby Ruth.
Fried clams.
I miss Baby Ruth.
Baby Ruths are good, yeah.
I don't eat them, but oh man, Baby Ruths.
What's your favorite like karaoke song, if you were going to go to a karaoke bar, what's your jam? What would you be rocking out to?
Either Aerosmith or AC/DC.
There you go. Hell yes.
All right. I think your battery is probably down to about 3% by now. So, yeah, okay. So we better get a proper goodbye with you before it just cuts off. But thank you so much for taking the time to do this. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, my pleasure.
And whenever you can talk or want to talk about some of these other projects, we would always love to have you back.
Sure. Yeah, no, it's like as they're, there comes a point where you can talk about them,
Yeah.
But it's not one of them you guys will really dig.
Awesome.
Oh,
All I'll say it's yes, it's a horror action adventure.
Ooh.
It takes place in the 1970s.
Already dig it.
Yep, and it's just like one of those titles that if I spit it out, everyone's just gonna run around trying to copy it.
Ah.
all right. Well, yeah, we don't want that.
And
But we'll wait
I'm
patiently.
responsible for too on that.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
yeah. So
Well,
anyway,
we'll leave it at that. Thank you so much, Kevin Altieri.
Yeah, we really appreciate it.
Pleasure.
Thank you very much, Kevin.
Have a great night, sir.
you too. Good night.
Have a good one.
Bye-bye.